Welcome everyone to our council meeting. I'll ask everyone to be upstanding for our opening prayer. Almighty God, we ask that you be present at this meeting to assist us in our service to the community through local government. We pray that our decisions will be wise and taken with goodwill and clear conscience. Amen. Councillor and officer presence at the meeting. We have all councillors in attendance, our CEO, our Director of Infrastructure and Environment, Director of Community and Planning, and unfortunately our Director of Corporate and Organisational Development is ill. Apologies and granting of leave. Don't have any disclosure of conflict of interest. Need to disclose. Nil. Confirmation of minutes. The minutes of the meeting listed for the ordinary council meeting held on the 24th of April 2024. Someone like to move those minutes? Councillor Waltman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 24th of April 2024 be confirmed.
Thanks, Councillor Waltman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dickshay. All those in favour? Carried. Petition and joint letters. Nil. Public question time. Nil. And informal meeting of councillors. We've got a bit of a list there. The 3rd of April, 10th of April, 15th of April and 17th of April. Again, would someone like to... Councillor Anderson?
Thanks, Mr Mayor, but I did want to just mention the informal meeting for the 10th of the 4th on page 1. We just needed to add on the bottom of it, we just missed a line, that was all. 11:30, Director of Community Planning. We didn't actually put in what she presented, the reconciliation and action plan report.
Yep. Thank you.
And would you like me to move that?
That'd be great if you move that with that amendment. And a seconder? Councillor Dickshay. All those in favour? Carried. 9's organisational improvement. 9.1 action sheet reports. Happy to take those as read. Any questions or clarification on the action sheet reports? Someone like to... Councillor Dickshay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that the report be noted.
Thanks, Councillor Dickshay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Waltman. Again, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. 9.2 quarterly budget report. With the absence of our director, if we're happy to take that one as read, but if there are any questions or clarification, I'm sure we'll try and work through them. Nothing? Anyone like to, would someone like to move a motion? Councillor Scales.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Scales. A seconder? Councillor Anderson. Councillor Scales, would you like to speak to that at all?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just want to identify the officer's view, or a paragraph out of the officer's view there, being that the presentation of the draft budget for 24-25 highlights that into the future, Council remains dependent on the receipt of one-off grant funding to support renewal of our ageing infrastructure, and significantly that the funding being supplied by state and federal governments is more often tied to construction of new infrastructure as opposed to the renewal of our roads, bridges, drainage assets, etc. and that we really need an increase in untied government grants to support the facilitation of the renewal of these projects, or the renewal of this infrastructure into the future. So we are heavily reliant on grants from the feds and the state, and to continue our financial sustainability, we will need to see an increase in those into the very near future. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Scales. Councillor Anderson?
No, thank you.
Who else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dickshaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to support the comments of Councillor Scales, and perhaps we should consider if there needs to be anything about advocacy in the future. I know we already have, but perhaps we need to continue with that.
Thanks, Councillor Dickshaw. If there's nothing further, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? No one's against. Carried. Did I miss 9.2?
No.
9.3 right there. Good. Rightio. Struggling with. Nine point three is Audit and Risk Committee notice of resignation. You taking that one as read it? I think.
Happy to speak to it, Mr Mayor, and it's really just to acknowledge the resignation of Ms Lauren Murray from our Audit and Risk Committee, we have a recommendation there that the resignation be accepted by Council and that Ms Murray be thanked for her contribution to the the Audit and Risk Committee, and just noting that we'll commence an advertising campaign and recruitment of a new external member of the committee as soon as possible.
Yeah. Any questions or clarification? I'd like to move a motion on that. Councillor Dickshaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to recommend that Ms Lauren Murray's resignation be accepted by Council, and that Ms Murray be thanked for her contribution to the Audit and Risk Committee for about 4 years.
Thanks, Councillor Dickshaw. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Scales. Does anyone want to speak to that at all? Anyone else like to speak to that? We'll put the motion. All those in favour? No one's against, so it's carried. 10's bushfire relief and recovery. There are no bushfire relief and recovery reports. 11 is community wellbeing, and 11.1 is reconciliation action plan. And I'll hand to our Director of Community and Planning.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is seeking in-principle approval for the draft reconciliation action plan for Taoiseach Council. It's worth noting that the reconciliation action plan draft, as it stands, applies solely to the organisation, not to the broader community, although there's some obvious considerations for the broader community within it. As outlined in the report, the process that we're proposing is that we follow the Reconciliation Action Australia process, which is that Council develops a plan in consultation with their staff and submits it as an in-principle approval to Reconciliation Australia, who then will provide some feedback, and there may be some back and forth before a final document is ascertained. In terms of reconciliation action plans, they are plans that have largely been passed across Victorian councils, and they are designed to really commit organisations to reconciliation and to start you on the path of that journey. This particular reconciliation action plan is a Reflect Action Plan, which is the first 12 to 18 months of ever having a reconciliation action plan. So it's the early days of your reconciliation pathway, and the design of the document that we've adopted is the one recommended by Reconciliation Australia. The recommendation is as presented.
Thank you very much. Any questions or clarification on that? Councillor Dickshay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note that there's a number of recommendations or proposals to be implemented over a period of time. Is it possible to give an approximate cost to us to implement or to commence implementing those actions?
Through you, Mr Mayor, as part of the funding that we received from Emergency Recovery Victoria, one of the lessons learned out of bushfires was that making positive steps towards reconciliation was really important for Aboriginal communities. We, as part of that, had looked at an allocation from that budget to kickstart a process like this. We're working on approximately $50,000 at this stage, and that's for some of the actions in here. And at this stage, it's a combination of either staff or organisational time and, contracted works for training and things like that.
Thank you.
Councillor Warman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to thank the Director and all the staff on putting this piece of work together. As the Director said, it's the start of the journey. And as Councillor Dickshay said, there's a number of actions. And as the Director has said to us in previous meetings, a lot of these actions have already been brought about. So, but there are some that have to be implemented later on, and I think we'll just work through them as we can. When, as Councillor Dickshay said, when funding comes available, and I compliment the staff.
Thanks. Councillor Wortman. Any further questions? I've just got in the report where we have the table of actions, the responsibility of a RAP officer. Just wondering what your thoughts might be on what that position looks like, because I don't believe at this stage we have a budget allocation for that.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's correct. So we don't have the role per se, and we're trying to be a bit flexible with what the structure of that role could be, recognising that it's probably likely that we'll struggle to recruit someone who identifies as being Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, but we may have other organisations that are Aboriginally owned or run who could support us in the process. So there is a line in the Reconciliation Action Plan that says the role is yet to be recruited and the structure of the role will be determined as part of the RAP process. Following this meeting, if there's support from Council around the document, I think it's further conversations to have with some of those organisations about what their availability might be to look at arrangements like secondments or contracting directly in to make sure that we have someone within the organisation able to pursue the actions. The allocation in the recovery budget of $50,000 that I previously referred to includes that cost. So at this point, not anticipating additional budget, but I think if there was further additional budget requirements, that would be something that could come back to Council.
Very good, thank you. Any further questions, clarification? Someone like to move a motion? Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as presented.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wortman. Councillor Anderson, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to say it's a very important piece of work, and thank you to the Director and the staff for the work they've put in thus far.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Wortman.
I'm fine, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Anyone else like to speak the motion? Councillor Scales.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to endorse Councillor Anderson's comments. This has already been what I'd consider a long journey, almost 2 years to get to this stage, and it's a journey that will continue for many years to come. So thank you, and thank you to the staff for all their hard work in getting us this far.
Thanks, Councillor Scales. Anyone else? Probably just like to add that, I read in the report that I think they were census figures, but we in Town and Shire have above the state average of people that identify as being Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander descent. So it's something that as a council we need to be looking at. So if there's nothing further, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? No one's against, so it's carried. 11.2, Early Years and Maternal Child Health Report. Again, I'll call on our Director of Community and Planning.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is a report that's provided twice a year and is provided as information only. I just did want to highlight some of the things that we're always proud of, but perhaps most importantly is really how much Early Years has actually grown to the point where it's its own report these days. But on top of that, really proud of the work that has been done around the new management structure, which is, as we have gone on with time, almost fully recruited to at this stage, which I think will really help solidify some amazing practices in early years moving forward and really boost the excellence of all the centres. I also really wanted to talk a bit about, there's a line in the overview around staff participation in the Teacher Talk program. That's one of many educational programs that we operate, that we put in place 2 years ago, which is a formal professional development program for our early years. And that was really to ensure that the children that attend our centres get the best quality education and care that they can. So really great to have the staff go through that program and get that support. The recommendation is that the report be noted.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walton.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor, and thanks to the Director. Look, I think we all know that our early years centres are feeling the pressure with demand, and look, I can't thank our educators. The job they do is fantastic. But there is a piece of work happening at the moment into early years, and I was just wondering when that may be available or may be finished. Sorry.
Yeah. Through you, Mr Mayor. So that work is still currently going. We're expecting some draft reports or findings to be done for the end of June and sort of probably for the third quarter of the calendar of 2024 for the final report, which will be submission to the department. That will lead to some advocacy for future infrastructure improvements, which we hope we can gain to really open up the capacity a bit more in all of our centres.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, that piece of work is on capacity and...
It particularly in kindergartens, through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah.
Any further questions, clarification? Councillor Dickshay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note in the key engagements or networking section of the report, it mentions one of the groups, the Mungabarina Aboriginal Corporation. That's not a group that I've heard mentioned before in our meetings. Are they somebody who have an interest in this area, as in our council area?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I don't want to cause any disrespect to any of the Aboriginal groups by getting potentially the familial lines incorrect. But Mungabarina is largely based, or the office is based in Albury-Wodonga, but it covers a range of areas, some of which would have been areas that are included in Towel. We have had a long-standing arrangement with Mungambarin Aboriginal Corporation for the delivery of educational programs into our kindergartens, and that's something that we've been doing for a number of years and been growing over time.
Thank you.
Any further questions or clarification? Someone like to move the motion? Councillor Dickshay.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the report be noted.
Thanks, Councillor Dickshay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wortman. Councillor Dickshay, would you like to speak to that report at all? That motion?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillors Wortman.
I think Mr.
Anyone
Mayor.
else like to speak to the motion? No? I was just going to add one thing, like I think it's really great that we've actually now got to the stage where we're having a report on this because of the engagement we now have with kinder and early years across the Shire. So I think it's something that probably when I started on council we were only dipping the toe in a little bit, and you know, it's grown and it always has its challenges with staffing and different things like that, but you know, I think as a whole we've done a great job, the staff have done a great job in being able to provide those services. And then when you look at the different groups that are involved in that as well through maternal and child health and different things is huge. So it's a great benefit to our community to have something like this happening for mainly our younger residents. So thanks very much to all the staff that are involved in that area. If there's nothing further, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. 12, asset management. 12.1, asset management report. I'll call on our Director of Infrastructure and Environment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report presents the overall activities of the asset management program from the 31st of March 2024, up to the 31st of March 2024, and includes information around asset inspections that are currently being undertaken and the maintenance and replacement programs along with issuing of permits. And the recommendation is as presented.
Thank you very much. Any questions or clarification on the asset management report? Councillor Dickshay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note in the officer's view in the report, the comment is made that around the potential requirement for substantial future capital budget allocation for maintenance and replacement of council assets. Are you able to explain what the catalyst might be for that view?
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor. We've had a number of bridge inspections and culvert inspections happening across the Shire. They've identified some additional major culverts, which would be over 600 centimetres in diameter, where across the network there's an estimate of up to 300 to 400 additional assets, which will increase our asset base. And because they haven't been on our asset list for inspection in the past, it means that some of those are likely to come back in poor condition because we haven't been able to look at them. We didn't know they were there. Along with that, we're getting an independent inspection done of our playgrounds. This hasn't been done for a couple of years, and we're expecting some additional works to come out of that, to meet the standards for playgrounds.
Thank you. Is there any explanation as to why such a large number of assets might have been identified that haven't previously been identified?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are working off an asset list that was provided by a professional, and so there's two explanations as to why this may have happened. When the first list was created, they may have been using a different size culvert as the definition of major, so a higher, a larger culvert, or simply that when they were doing the first round of inspections, some of them were missed because they're not visible. Some of them are sort of covered in reeds on the sides of the road, and if you're driving past, they're not marked by a white post, some of them, so you're not necessarily going to see them if you do a drive-by. You'd have to walk the roads to identify some of them. So, yeah, there's a number of explanations as to why there may be some missing off the list.
And we do have a large number of local roads.
We have one of the largest network of local roads in the state.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Waltman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to comment on that, we often list in reports about our bridges and major culverts, but the public probably don't realise, like what the director's talking about. These larger culverts are so important for infrastructure, such an important piece of infrastructure to channel the water away from roads and through roads. These large culverts, and they're big expenses to replace, very big expenses, and yes, the ongoing battle of small rural councils.
I'd say we only have to look at a couple down the Murray Valley Highway near Old Tallangatta to see what has to happen when they need to be replaced. It can take years. Wouldn't happen with council assets. Any further? Someone like to move the motion? Councillor Scales.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Scales. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dickshay. Councillor Scales, would you like to speak to that at all?
I think a lot's been said, and I really like your optimism there in your past comment, Mr. Mayor. I'll just say the officer's view, once again, it's great having the officer's view presented to us in this form. Recent changes in weather patterns over the past month are expected to assist with asset restoration timeframes, which is fantastic. Nice and dry, so we can get to it. Now, it's not fantastic for our agricultural sector, however, so good for council to be able to get out there and get onto these assets. However, not great for our agricultural sector at the moment. My grandfather often said, don't worry about a drought, it always rains after it. So, and as Councillor Dickshay also pointed out, that it's the officer's view that substantial future capital budgets will be required for the maintenance of these assets. So once again, we'll be leaning heavily on the state and federal government for some extra funding, such as the increase to roads to renewal, which has come through this year and is promised to increase again next year as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Scales. Councillor Dickshay.
No, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? If there's nothing further, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? None against? Carried. 12.2, Capital Works Report. Again, I'll call on our Director of Infrastructure and Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report presents the overall status of the Active Capital Works program, which I think at the start of the financial year was around $27 million and about 63 projects. It includes updates on the project status and the progress of the projects, the expenditure and the risk of completion by June 30 for some projects. And the recommendation is as presented.
Thank you very much. Any questions or clarification? Councillor Scales.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. There's some substantial movements around in this space presented over the 9 dot points, I think it is. Just probably after some assurance that the projects that funding had been allocated to are still progressing or have been completed, and that overall we're within our overall capital budget in this area.
Through you, Mr Mayor, there are a number of projects that require budget movements. We're trying to be transparent in moving this money around between different projects within the capital allocation, and where we look like we're going to push the capital budget over substantially, we will come back to you with individual reports for those particular projects. But I can assure you that the movements that are suggested in this recommendation are to tidy up some overs and unders between projects, which won't affect the overall capital budget.
Thank you.
Any further questions, clarification? Councillor Dickshay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Madam Director, I just heard you mention, I think the intention to bring a report if there was going to be a potential budget overrun or cost issue. Is that for moving forward?
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
Any further questions or clarification? Would someone like to move motion? Councillor Wortman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to move a motion that's a little bit different to the... because there's such a big reallocation of money, I'd like to word it that we endorse 1, 2, 3, 4 and 8. They're smaller amounts of money, and that we approve 5, 6, 7 and 9 because they're larger, substantial movements of money to projects.
Did we get that one? Yep. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Anderson.
I'd like to move an amendment, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Scales.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to shuffle around a couple of Councillor Wortmans there.
Okay.
I'd actually like to move that number 1, the following budget allocations be endorsed, being 1, 2, 4 and 6, and that the budget allocations to be approved are 3, 5, 7, 8 and 9.
No, I'm happy to go with that.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dickshay. Councillor Scales, would you like to speak to that?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, some of these are large budget shuffles or reallocations that we've got in there, and a couple of others sort of relate to LRCIP, being a federal government funding, etc. as well. So that's why we're just we're adopting some, and some have been can be done under our CEO's delegations.
Thanks, Councillor Scales. Councillor Dickshay.
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. I supported the amendment because I believe it identifies the LRCIP funding compared to just relying on the amounts of the
Thank you.
amendment.
Is there anyone else? We'll put the amendment to make it the motion. All those in favour? Carried. It now becomes the motion. Well, is there any further discussion required? If not, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? Any against? No. The motion has been moved? Carried. No, it was already moved. Carried. 12.3, cleaning of municipal buildings, contract number 2023-24-056. And I'm going to call on our director again for infrastructure and environment. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report presents the tender results for the award of the contract for cleaning of municipal buildings. A copy of the detailed tender assessment has been circulated to councils prior to the meeting, and the recommendation is as presented.
Thank you very much. Any questions or clarification, councillors, on that report? Nothing. Everyone happy there? Will someone like to move a motion? All very quiet. Councillor Duxay.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as presented.
Thanks, Councillor Duxay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wortman. Councillor Duxay, would you like to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Wortman.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. The company that is mentioned who've put in a tender for this is a Melbourne-based company, and look, I'm very happy with the references that they've provided. I know it's a big thing to assign a Melbourne-based company, but they've done work around the border, and yeah, I think it's an opportunity to utilise their services.
Thanks, Councillor Wortman. Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Scales.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just to back up Councillor Wortman's comments there, and of course you would envisage that they're going to employ locally and not travel from Melbourne daily to complete the cleaning. Thank you.
Great. If there's nothing further, put the motion. All those in favour? None against? Carried. .4 Dartmouth splash pad tender evaluation. And again, I'll call on our Director of Infrastructure and Environment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide information to support the assessment of tender submissions for the Dartmouth splash pad construction. This is an exciting project for Dartmouth, and the recommendation is as presented.
Any questions or clarification on the report, councillors? Councillor Scales.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Fantastic to see this project get to where it has at the moment. To be honest, I'm a bit surprised at the tender price that has come in. Which is good to see. I suppose can I just ask for a bit of assurance that it's not going to be a concrete pad with a soaker hose or a sprinkler going tick 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 around it.
Through you, Mr Mayor. The design is up for discussion. I guess there is a number of elements within the design that will, it won't just be a soaker hose on there. Farley Pools have provided a design that you can change over the elements within the pad. So it is a concrete pad, but it has additional infrastructure that comes out, so water that squirts up in the air, and also we're going to go back and have a look for something that provides for larger children, essentially, as well, as a key element of the splash pad, whether that be a bucket or tipping water or something of that nature.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Dickshay?
Just by way of clarification, there was some engagement with community before we've got to this point, wasn't there, about what the design or what the product might look like?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, there's been a significant amount of engagement.
Yep.
And that's been balanced with elements of the splash pad that are water efficient.
Yep.
So if we get further feedback, we'll respond to that prior to construction. So there's some flexibility in what, at this point, in what can be delivered.
Thank you.
And any others? Probably just one, so this is one part of the works that are happening at the Dartmouth. Can you just give us a quick update on what else is planned for that area?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's also planned that we do a pump and jumps track around the park as part of the construction. Yeah. So that's actually included, if you read through the summary of the report, it's actually included in this contract to undertake that construction.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's going to happen,
Sorry.
but it's not
Yeah,
in the...
so not this one.
Yep.
Sorry, my mistake. So the key elements of the Dartmouth project are the splash pad, along with the earthen pump and jumps track around the park, and reconfiguration of the existing playground to make sure that we can fit the splash pad in. This contract is just for the splash pad. There are other works on the way.
So it's that'll be good. Whole project, a whole area project, and this is one part of it. So very good. Are there any further questions or clarification? Someone like to move motion? Councillor Scales.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as presented.
Seconder. Councillor Dickshay. Councillor Scales, would you like to speak to that at all?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think it's been covered off in the questions, which has been fantastic. Thank you. That was very tongue-in-cheek when I suggested it could be a soaker hose over a concrete pad, but I was very surprised at the amount that the tender came in at. I thought it would be significantly higher. I will note that in the recommendation that the Chief Executive Officer is authorised to approve contract variations up to the total value of the allocated budget, so that will give some further scope to potentially a bit more grander, larger water play feature within the splash park. Splash pad. It's not Dartmouth Waterworld, we must remember that.
Not yet.
And it's also
Stage
not yet.
one.
And it's also very exciting to see that within the budget we do have room for the pump/jumps bikes track, as well as the irrigation that will be required in that. So overall, it's a good news story, and I look forward to the splash park being delivered. Of course, it's got that. The idea of it is it's not just for the children of Dartmouth, but it's there for the peak tourism periods, where you see paddies reserve being overflowing with people trying to get into the water. And this came back from our council planning that we conducted back in 2020 and formed part of our council plan. So delivering for our communities as we're meant to. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Scales. Councillor Dickshay.
No, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to the motion? The only one other point I'd like to make on that I noticed was that the opportunity for the water from the park to actually get used around the area, to have a nice green space as well. I think it's always very inviting when you come to somewhere and it's nice and green around it. So I think that's a positive as well.
Can I slip something else in there with your indulgence, Mr. Mayor?
I'll allow that.
I would just like to add that, yes, by able to using that water afterwards, so I think the idea is it's pumped out nightly, for irrigation and for watering that area is a very big plus, because it actually fronts onto the neighbourhood safer place as well. So that will reduce the cost of trying to water that area and right through the parklands there. So it's a double bonus.
Yep.
Thank you.
If there's nothing further, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? No one against? Carried. Uh, 12.5, Bellbridge Walking Track Stage 2 and 3, tender evaluation. And again, I'll call on our Director of Infrastructure and Environment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide information and seek a council decision to appoint a contractor to undertake the construction of the Bellbridge Walking Track Stages 2 and 3, which goes from the last shade shelter on the foreshore at Bellbridge through to the Corryong boat ramp. And the recommendation is as presented.
Thank you very much. Any questions or clarification? Councillors. Councillor Anderson?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. To our Director, I see that we included stages 2 and 3. How'd that come to be?
Through you, Mr Mayor. We put stage 3 in the tender as a provisional item, and the costing that's come back through the tender process has been within the budget to be able to deliver stages 2 and 3. We had originally intended, if we didn't have enough budget, that stage 3 would be left out, but it's been a good outcome.
Great.
Yeah, terrific. Well done, thank you.
Any further questions or clarification? Just have one, being with the contractor that we're recommending, have they got, or have we got any idea if they're able to start the project soon? I know we're coming close to winter, and it might rain one day, and is that discussion been had yet, or does that happen once we've moved to the next stage?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I think that has been agreed, that we will proceed with construction. There's always a risk over winter when it starts to rain that site conditions become unworkable, and we'll deal with any delays at that point in time. But there's definitely an intention to start because the weather is fantastic for construction at the moment.
Beautiful. Great to see it on the go. If there's no further questions, would someone like to move a motion? Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as presented.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wortman. Councillor Anderson, would you like to speak to that?
I will. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can't tell you how excited the community is, who have been talking to me a lot about this, but I've been in with them as well. So it's going to be very exciting to have it done. It is used a lot, so and by quite a few who come to visit as well. So thank you very much. It'll be terrific. Thank you.
Councillor Wortman.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just following on from your question about the time frame, it's in the assessment. They start at the end of May and finish by July.
Should have read it clearly.
Too excited.
Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Dickshaw.
I think it's a great outcome, and it's a pity that some of our other tracks haven't had suitable tenderers come in at realistic prices like that as well.
Thanks, Councillor Dickshaw. Councillor Wortman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, and again, the 3 tenderers were all had Albury-based offices, so they were local, so it was really good and very competitive. So excellent, good result.
If If there's nothing further, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? Again, no one against. Carried. .6 Corryong CBD parking option report. And again, I'll call on our Director of Infrastructure and Environment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is provided to provide an update to Council on the Corryong CBD parking review. You'll recall there was a resolution passed in an earlier meeting regarding looking at additional parking in the Corryong CBD. This report provides an overview on the engagement activities that have happened since that resolution was passed, and also intentions for ongoing engagement activities. And the recommendation is as presented.
Thank you very much. Any questions or clarification? Councillor Wortman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to emphasise the Director's comment there about targeted engagement for the future development of this project, and yeah, that'll be very important. Yeah.
Any further questions or clarification? Oh, someone like to move the motion? Councillor Dickshay.
I'd like to move that the report be noted.
Thanks, Councillor Dickshay. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Anderson. Councillor Dickshay, would you like to speak to that motion?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's obviously a very important part of the streetscape redevelopment in Corryong that some parking solutions be sorted. And I'm glad to see that this extra work has commenced, and that I know there will, and I also note that the report indicates that once preliminary discussions have been completed, that there will be broader community consultation, and I know that that's a very important part of this process.
Yep.
Just seek clarification on the motion being that the report be noted. Recommendation is presented. And whether there's a reading to include that in an additional motion.
We have a question on the clarification on the recommendation.
No, just was
On
the motion.
the
that
motion,
report
sorry,
be
that
noted?
or the motion that you're moving is.
I'm prepared to change the motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor. How about I roll with that Council notes the update and supports ongoing targeted engagement with land and business owners to further explore additional parking options, and that engagement with the community on the options for Donaldson Street parking modifications.
That sounds very good. Do I need a seconder for that?
Probably do.
Yep. Councillor Anderson.
I've
You're
already
probably
said
not
what I
getting
need to
a chance.
say.
Councillor Anderson, would you like to speak to that motion?
No, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to the motion? So the only thing I'd like to add there probably is that this is, just allowing us to go to the next stage and progress with community consultation on the proposed options for Donaldson Street, which we look forward to. The community engagement in that area. If there's nothing further, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. 12.7's stabilisation of major patches. And again, I'll call on our Director of Infrastructure and Environment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide information to support the assessment of tender submissions for the stabilisation of major patches. This is our major patching program, also known as dig-outs, that we do across our road network every year to ensure that small potholes don't become big potholes, among other things. And it also helps with our reseal program, I guess, across the Shire. So, and the recommendation is as presented.
Thank you very much. Any questions or clarification? Councillor Waltman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just like to fully endorse the Director's comments there. Our community, they see our reseal program, but the reseal program's only as good as what's underneath it, and the stabilisation of the patches is so important. And I know it's a big lot of money, but you can't put a reseal over a very poor base.
Won't last. Any further questions or clarification? Someone like to move motion? Councillor Waltman.
I'd like to move the recommendation as presented.
Thanks, Councillor Waltman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Scales. Councillor Waltman, would you like to speak to that at all?
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Scales, anyone else like to speak to it? No, only just adding on from what Councillor Waltman said. While we've got some dry weather and before it gets wet again, this is the ideal time to be trying to fix anything that's not quite right. So, yep, I think it's a great move. If there's nothing further, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? None against, carried. We've got no 13 land use planning, no land use planning reports, environmental sustainability, no environmental sustainability reports, so we'll 15 economic and tourism development. And we'll call on our Director of Community and Planning.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is a report that's presented twice annually, and it covers the activities under the economic development team, particularly in relation to tourism, agriculture. Just wanted to highlight some of the work of the team. First of all, the submission that was sent in for the Growing Regions Fund for Bellbridge Boathouse. Unfortunately, since we have found out that we were not successful, and we'll continue to look at other avenues for funding for that project. Also, there's an enormous amount of work that's gone into the upcoming Pub to Pelican Marathon event on the 2nd of June. So very exciting to see that, and to really highlight the multiple uses of the rail trail. That's not just for cycling. And last but not least, the wonderful attendance at the agricultural workshops that were held earlier in the year. It's great to see that partnership with Riverine Plains really coming to the fore. And I have some insight onto the rest of the year's planning, and really looking forward to those workshops being extended into new locations that are a little bit different from the last ones. And also some of the new formats we're looking at, so that the findings of those, or the presentations in those workshops, is actually also accessible in video and through the newsletter and other things. The recommendation is that the report is noted.
Thank you very much. Any questions or clarification? Councillor Waltman.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'd just like to share my disappointment with the Director about our news about the Bellbridge Boat Club, but there is another round of funding in the growing regions, so we never know. I just got one little question. just how the destination website project is progressing.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, we've had a number of challenges with that project, to say the least. Not only in securing contractors, but also just getting the platforms to work the way that we want to. But it's nearing completion, and looking forward to that being done for June, which we are trying to make sure that happens at the same time as a Great River Road marketing plan is ready to go, so that all the collateral's done, particularly for the Upper Murray, who obviously can stand to benefit, as well as the Baringa Peninsula from that marketing.
Thank you.
Councillor Dick Shane.
Thank you. Beautiful segue there, because I was just wondering, are you able to provide an update on the expected completion time? And this may not be a question for the Director of Community and Planning, I just realised, around the Pine Mountain Interpretive Centre.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I can answer components of it. So the grant funding itself requires the project to be wrapped up by 30th of June 2024.
Yep.
At this point in time, that's exactly what we're working to. That said, there's always potential weather issues that could get in the way of that, but we're not expecting that it will be. So my understanding is it was supposed to be done in the next week.
Because the Lace Monitor's looking very lonely at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But the signs have been fabricated. They're ready to go.
Yep.
I know that they had some delays actually just getting someone to lay the cement for the sign. So still working on 30th of June 2024.
Thank you.
Any further? Yes, Councillor Dick Shay's back.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I know it's not in the scope of this report, but I'd just like to mention that I was fortunate enough to go to the Tourism and Business Expo that we put on last week, and I think it was a excellent evening, and both the presenters and the people that attended would have benefited greatly from that, and so well done to your staff.
Any further questions or clarification? Someone like to move the motion? Councillor Wortman, seconder. Oh, no, better what motion are you going to move? That'd be good.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that the report be noted.
A seconder. Councillor Anderson. Councillor Wortman, would you like to speak to that at all? Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I have to. I'm sorry, Mr Mayor. Just to say that we're particularly disappointed, but we will go again, and hopefully we'll get over the line next time with the Bellbridge Boathouse. So, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Scales.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to endorse our Director's comments there around the partnership with Riverine Plains. In another position that I'm involved in, I've heard nothing but great feedback about Riverine Plains and the things that have been delivered across the Shire. So that's a big thumbs up. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, Councillor Scales. If there's nothing further, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Councillor reports. 16.1 Wodonga Health Summit report. Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I will just briefly. Yourself, myself and our CEO is Juliana Phelps all attended the Regional Health Summit in March at the Q, along with many other councillors, which was fantastic to all be supporting each other. It was mainly to explore the strengths and address challenges and propose solutions to the Albury-Wodonga Health and going forward. The summit was reaching out to all the councils in the region, wider region, so we could collectively improve health outcomes for the Albury-Wodonga region, particularly for us in the Towong Shire. We're very reliant on Albury-Wodonga Health, so it's very important for us to advocate and be represented. Our main concern that a single-site hospital will not be possible with the funding available. So we'll continue to follow up on that. From that meeting, we had 10 outcomes that we would be looking at, which I'll pass around to all the councillors so that going forward we can keep continuing to advocate for our communities. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask on that report? Or someone like to move a motion? Councillor Scales,
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Happy to move that the report be noted.
and a seconder, Councillor Anderson. Would anyone like to speak to that at all? Councillor Anderson, have you done that?
I'm done, thank you.
We'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. I think you're up again, Councillor Anderson.
Sorry
Opening
about
the new emergency department, Albury-Wodonga Health.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The opening of the new emergency department at the Albury-Wodonga Health was held on the 4th of April. Myself and the CEO attended this one. It's a bright and bubbly space, which might make that adventure of having to go to ED a little bit more bearable. They are particularly looking at making it, they had a greater emphasis on paediatrics and mainstreaming their admissions with suitable wait areas, so that's a big plus, I feel. But one thing we did, myself and the CEO, Juliana, we did get to speak to the Minister, Marianne Thomas, and she spoke about in her speech using our hospitals such as Corryong and Tallangatta for rehabilitation and recuperation after or being in ED or other surgeries, and letting people get back to their communities, which is really important and may assist with bed blocking going forward. The new the old ED department will be changed into bays, overnight bays into the future, but they're just not quite there yet, and hopefully that'll be done by the end of the year. So that's a good outcome for us and our community, I feel. We also spoke to the operations staff on navigating challenges with our distance and travel as well. So we're opening those conversations, which is really important for our community members. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Councillor Anderson, any questions? Okay, Councillor Waltman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. Councillor Anderson brought up about bed blocking. Yeah, great to see the new ED, but the throughput's not there. We've still got ambulance ramping, can't get the patients through. It's very disappointing.
Any further questions? Someone like to move a motion? Councillor Anderson. Yeah.
The report be noted, is that right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, I think that'll be sufficient. a seconder? Councillor Scales? Again, Councillor Anderson, you've
No,
covered off.
thank you.
Councillor Scales? anything to add?
Just briefly, yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. It's interesting that Councillor Anderson mentioned that the Minister spoke about moving patients out of, say, the Albury Wodonga Health and back into your Talangatas, your Corryongs, etc. for rehabilitation. I just wonder about the capacity of Talangata Health Service, Corryong, Walwa, to be able to facilitate that, or if they're going to need upgrades into the future to facilitate such a move. Thank you.
Any further comment? We'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Councillor Dickshay, Anzac Day report.
I don't need to speak to that. Thank you,
Happy with what's been presented? Any questions? Would someone like to move Councillor Dickshay?
I'd like to move that that report be noted.
Thank you, Councillor Dickshay. Seconder. Councillor Anderson. I'd like to speak to that. Probably just add that a thank you to Councillor Anderson for attending two Anzac Day events which allowed us to have someone at Cudgewell. So I think that's probably the first time that we've had someone been able to lay a wreath at Cudgewell for us. So thank you. If there's nothing further, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Anzac Day report myself. I was lucky enough to go to Corryong, and it was actually been there numerous times for Anzac Day, and it's always a great day, and this was no exception. And I just think it's really good the amount of people that come along to these events to support the men and women that have served our country and continue to do so. And you know, I think that's a really, I feel it's increasing anyway, the feeling of respect that our community has for those people that are doing that for our country. So it's something that I think is a very positive for our communities. But yep, present that report, and happy for any questions. If not, I'll happy to move that the report be noted. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Dickshay. We'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Seventeen's urgent business, which we don't have any of. 18's committee minutes, 18.1 OH&S committee meeting from April 2024. If we're happy to take that one as read, and if there are any questions or clarification. No? Would someone like to move a motion? Councillor Scales.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So that it doesn't lapse, I'd like to move that the unconfirmed minutes for the Occupational Health and Safety Committee meeting held on the 9th of April 2024 be noted.
Thanks, Councillor Scales. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Anderson. Councillor Scales, like to speak to it at all?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Anderson?
No, thank you.
Anyone else? We'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. 19.1 policies for adoption. The following policy was tabled for review at the March 2024 council meeting. Any questions or clarification on that report, councillors? Someone like to move the motion? We've got some blue on our hands. Councillor Anderson?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation as presented.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. Seconded, Councillor Scales. Councillor Anderson, would you like to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Scales.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just the review of this policy comes at a good time as we're about to roll out our third bin and those changes that we have to our curbside collection coming along, being FOGO bin once a week, red lidded bin every second week, and our recycling every second week. And I would just like to highlight, whilst it's not in this policy part, that glass bottles and jars can still go in the recycling bin. There has been a little bit of comments around in the community, but they can still go in the recycle bin, but we do highly encourage that they be taken to a glass recovery station or indeed one of the places where you can get 10 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Scales. Any further? Anyone else like to speak to it? No. We'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Sealing of documents, nil. Confidential, nil. I just had a request from our Deputy Mayor, just to make a quick comment before we close our meeting.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'm not sure, but I'm sure everyone's aware this is National Volunteers Week. And we have so many volunteers in our Shire, and as the Shire we would be completely lost without them, the councillors, the staff. They range from picking up rubbish along walking tracks and rail trails, cleaning them clean and tidy, to running huge events such as the Man from Snowy River, Midder Muster, Tallangatta shows. Also we have many volunteers who run our rec reserves. So I did nearly forget, it is Orange Day today. So also our CFAs and SES, and I'm sure there's plenty of other groups that I could mention, but I'd go on all day. So I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the council, it's myself and the councillors and staff, for all our volunteers in the Shire. We really appreciate them, and they do a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson. And I believe that's the end of our meeting. So thank you very much for your attendance, and meeting closed.